7 spine-chilling vacation nightmares, sinister secrets exposed from cursed destinations abroad. The picturesque coastal village in Maine promised breathtaking views, a gentle sea breeze, and the hope of rekindling family bonds. But little did Rebecca know, the charm was a mask draped over sinister secrets. As they drove through the quaint streets lined with clapboard houses, a chill ran down her spine. Her kids, 10-year-old Ella and 8-year-old Ben, squealed with delight, blissfully unaware of the looming shadows that trailed their parents. Mark, her quiet husband, focused on navigating the winding roads, his fishing gear rattling in the back. Rebecca clutched the passenger seat, a sense of dread bubbling beneath her skin. They arrived just as twilight draped the village in eerie hues, the golden sun sinking into the water, casting elongated shadows. The local diner was cozy and inviting, but as Rebecca glanced at the locals chatting jovially, their smiles seemed too wide, too eager. An unsettling murmur filled her ears, and she caught snippets of a conversation that sent cold tendrils creeping along her spine. "They take visitors, and we prosper," one man said, his tone laced with something dark. She shook the thought away. It was just local folklore, nothing to worry about. As the week unfolded, Ella became increasingly fascinated with the town's folklore. She wandered into the mist-laden woods, drawn toward the cliffs that loomed beyond the village, humming an eerie song Rebecca recognized but couldn't place. An unshakable feeling of unease gripped Rebecca's heart as she watched her daughter sway, entranced. "Forget about the cliffs, Ella," she urged. "Let us go build sandcastles instead." But Ella's resolve was chilling, her eyes glazed over with an intensity that frightened Rebecca. One evening, the locals held a ceremonial dance. The rhythm was hypnotic, but the atmosphere thickened, a tension coursing through the air like static. Ben suddenly cried out, his face pale, claiming he saw shadows reaching from the edge of the woods. Gasps erupted from the villagers, their expressions a mix of fear and sparse sympathy. The happiness that had once engulfed the festivity evaporated, replaced by something glad for chaos. Rebecca glanced around, the weight of countless eyes pressing upon her. She instinctively shielded her children, her heart racing as she felt the urgency to escape. Desperate, she resolved to leave at dawn, but morning brought a chilling revelation. Their car, once parked near the hotel, was now ensnared by town locals, blocking their only exit. The cheerful facade melted away, revealing grim expressions as they encircled the family. "You don't understand," one whispered, "we need visitors for the village to thrive." Rebecca's pulse quickened. Memories of family stories, those faint whispers of her lineage involving prosperity and sacrifice, clawed at her mind, merging with the present horrors unfolding before her. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." But as the villagers drew closer, their chants filled the air with ancient tones. Rebecca understood the chilling truth. Ella stood at the forefront, her voice rising, innocent yet faltering, laced with an ancient chant amidst a throng of whispers, drawing everyone's gaze. Rebecca's heart sank. This was no mere vacation, they had awoken something darker, tethered to her family's hidden past. As villagers closed in, a drastic question loomed: what price would Rebecca pay to save her family from becoming part of this horror that clawed greedily at their fate? The crowd was electric with tension. Rebecca's heart thundered in her chest, a wild drumbeat that drowned out the rhythmic chants of the villagers. Panic surged through her veins. Where was Mark? She spun, scanning the oppressive mass of faces, but he was nowhere to be found. The villagers were inching closer, their expressions twisting into grotesque masks of fervor. Ella stood entranced, her serene face now a portrait of unsettling calm. "Ella!" Rebecca shouted, desperation lacing her voice. But her daughter didn't respond. The girl's eyes sparkled with something otherworldly, a void that swallowed the daylight around her. It was as if an entirely different presence inhabited her small body. One villager stepped forward, taller than the rest, his eyes locked on Rebecca. "Your daughter has been chosen," he said, his voice reverberating like a low growl. "She carries the blood of our ancestors. She must be offered. Only then will the balance return." "No!" Rebecca cried, her instinctive motherly rage igniting. She lunged toward Ella, but another villager surged forward, grabbing her by the arm with a grip like iron. The air filled with murmurs, a chorus of urging voices. "This must be done." "Do not fight," the man hissed, his breath hot and sour against her cheek. "You know of this. The sacrifice is part of the legacy." Evil laughter erupted from the villagers, and dark shadows flickered at the edges of the bonfire, illuminating the clearing. They were like wolves, hungry for their prey, and Rebecca felt the walls closing around her. A shroud of despair washed over her. She looked around, seeking the slightest glimmer of hope. "Mark!" She yelled again, but only the chants echoed back at her. With horror, she realized he might be trapped somewhere else, perhaps ensnared by the same sinister threads that enticed Ella. Through the mob, Ben struggled to approach but was held back, helpless and terrified. "Mommy!" he cried, his voice small and broken. Tears streamed down his face, unfurling the innocence that still clung to him in a world spiraling into darkness. "No!" Rebecca screamed, and with a surge of fury, she twisted away from the villager gripping her arm. She charged toward Ella, fighting against the throng as they surged forward. Suddenly, the ground trembled beneath her feet. The earth seemed to pulse in rhythm with the chants, and a deep, resonant voice echoed through the trees. "Visitors are the lifeblood, and blood must flow." A flash of darkness enveloped the clearing, and Rebecca stumbled. Then silence, a suffocating stillness where the chants faded to a whisper. The villagers stood frozen, their faces horror-stricken as the ground cracked, revealing cascading roots and shadow-like tendrils reaching out, yearning for something. The air turned thick, charged with a sensation both ancient and terrible. "Ella!" She screamed again, her heart wrenching at the sight of her daughter still enmeshed in the trance, pulsating energy surrounding her. Ben clutched Rebecca's leg, trembling. "Mom, what is happening?" he whimpered. With no choice, Rebecca realized she had to break the spell. "Ella, you have to come back to me." Tears streamed down her face, her voice softening. "You're stronger than this. You're my brave girl." For an instant, the mist surrounding Ella shimmered, revealing her true self. She blinked, bewildered. "Mom?" But before joy could flood Rebecca's heart, an ominous growl emanated from the depths of the woods. Shapes began to form, dark silhouettes creeping into the clearing, eyes glinting with malice. Just as the villagers began to step back, fear etched in their faces, Rebecca sensed they had awakened something far worse than the village's hunger for sacrifice. Something hungrier, ancient and restless, that was only just beginning to surface. "Run!" she shouted, the command echoing through the eerie quiet. And as they stumbled backwards in panic, a new urgency gripped Rebecca. What awaited them on the other side of the woods, and would Ella be pulled back again into the darkness? The chaos unfolded in moments that felt like hours. Rebecca grabbed Ben's hand tightly, pulling him from the center of the madness. She turned her gaze back to Ella, still standing there, the dark energy swirling around her, beckoning the shadows creeping forward. Fear clawed at Rebecca's insides. She had to get Ella away from here. The villagers were no longer chanting. They stared wide-eyed at the figures emerging from the woods, twisted, inhuman shapes slinking forward like nightmares come to life. Long, spindly limbs hung awkwardly at their sides, their eyes glowed an eerie orange, reflecting the bonfire's light. "Mom!" Ben cried, his voice small again, drowning in the nightmare around them. "What are they?" "I don't know," Rebecca said. The panic was bubbling in her chest like boiling water. Their grip on reality was slipping. They had to move. Before she could think, Rebecca bolted toward Ella, every instinct screaming to save her child. The grasp of the villagers tightened around them, a barricade of madness and fervor. "Get away from her!" Rebecca shouted, her voice raw and desperate. Ella's eyes, once lost in shadows, suddenly focused on her mother. In that instant, the world stood still as the connection between them pulsed with urgency. "Mom!" Ella called, reaching out with trembling fingers. The dark vortex continued to swirl, threatening to pull Ella back into the inky depths. "Fight it!" Rebecca cried, her heart breaking. "You're stronger than this." Just then, a horrible growl erupted from the trees, a sound that sliced through the air like a knife. The shapes in the shadows contorted, their forms shifting from one grotesque manifestation to another. The villagers staggered back, their faces pale with realization. Rebecca felt the ground vibrate beneath her, as if the earth was alive, reacting to the presence of those creatures. "We have to go now." She screamed again, yanking Ben forward, their momentum pushing them deeper into the forest, but Ella didn't move. She stood rooted to the ground, the connection with her mother flickering like a dying light. The shadows were wrapping around her, pulling her back. "Ella, please." Rebecca pleaded, her mind racing through a whirlpool of fears. She felt a freezing grip on her heart as time slowed, every second stretching like an eternity. Ben tugged at her frantically. "Mom, we can't leave her." "No. Listen to me," Rebecca shouted, her voice rough with panic. "We have to run. She'll find her way back to us." Yet, she could see it, the swirling darkness had a grip on Ella that was tightening, a horrific allure drawing her into its depths. Rebecca's instincts recoiled at the thought of leaving her daughter, but the creatures had now breached the perimeter of the bonfire's light. The villagers began to scream, chaos erupting as the dark silhouettes lunged toward them. With a final push of desperation, Rebecca sprinted toward Ella, grabbing her arm and pulling her with all her might. For a fleeting moment, Ella's clarity returned. The glow of her eyes flickered again. "Mom, run!" she gasped, a single tear breaking through the shroud of malevolence engulfing her. The breeze howled menacingly, as if urging them to flee. "I won't leave you," Rebecca screamed, but the shadows were closing in. She could feel the energy twist, sharp like a thorn bush against her skin. Suddenly, a deafening roar filled the air, a primal sound that struck the very core of her being. The ground trembled violently, sending them all reeling. The villagers scattered in fear, their chants replaced with frantic cries as the malevolent figures surged toward them. "Run! Now!" Ella screamed, her voice breaking through the noise. Rebecca, torn between her children, felt the weight of dread crushing her chest. She grasped Ella, and with Ben still holding onto her, turned to dash into the trees, the shadows trailing them, always just a breath away. But as they plunged deeper into the forest, Rebecca knew with every frantic pulse in her heart that this was only the beginning. What dread awaited them in the dark, and could it be that the forest itself was alive, watching, waiting for their next move? Branches clawed at Rebecca's skin as they sprinted deeper into the forest. She felt the sharp, cold fingers of panic wrapping around her throat, threatening to squeeze the breath from her lungs. Behind them, the ground writhed, the sounds of chaos, screams and growls echoing through the trees, merging into a cacophony of terror. "Mom, what is happening?" Ben's small voice pierced her thoughts. She glanced back, catching a glimpse of the dark figures slinking closer, hungry shadows that moved faster than they could run. "We'll figure it out. Just hold on," she shouted, pushing herself to move even faster, her heart hammering against her ribs. Their only hope lay in escape, but her gaze flickered nervously toward Ella. The darkness pulsed around her daughter, its grip horrifically strong. "Ella, come on. Don't let it take you," Rebecca cried, as if her words alone could sever the shroud binding them. "I'm trying." Ella's voice trembled, mixed with desperation and fear. "I can feel it, it's pulling me, Mom." Suddenly, the ground lurched under their feet, roots and vines snaking up like serpents, reaching out to trip them. Rebecca's foot twisted painfully, but she held tight to Ben and Ella, using sheer willpower to surge forward. They crashed through the dense underbrush, heartbeats synchronizing with the frequency of their terror. Then, it hit them. The air became thick, suffocating. A heaviness that made Rebecca's skin crawl. It felt as if the forest itself had turned against them. Sound dimmed, the frantic howls of the villagers fading into an ominous silence. She spun around, expecting to see the shadows still lurching after them, but instead, a chilling stillness enveloped everything. "Mom, it's quiet," Ben whispered. Rebecca strained to listen, every instinct telling her something was wrong. "Ella, can you see anything?" But Ella's eyes were glazed, a vacant stare locking into the distance. "It feels different here. I think it wants me," she murmured, her voice distant and full of dread. "No. You're stronger than it. Fight, Ella. Remember who you are," Rebecca shouted, shaking her daughter lightly. But the shadows were creeping back, like a tide rising, ready to swallow them whole. Just then, a rustle nearby dared their attention. A figure emerged from the darkness, a villager, face etched with terror. "Run. They're coming for you," he gasped, before dashing past them, chaos threading in his wake. "Follow him," Rebecca urged, willing Ella into motion again. But as they turned, the forest swirled, the trees shifting, blocking off their way. Rebecca's heart sank. They were trapped. "Mom, help!" Ella cried, some clarity returning as the shadows lunged forward. Rebecca's heart raced. They had to do something. "We have to fight through. I won't let it take you," she yelled. The figures lunged, arms outstretched, clawing through the night. A piercing cry of pain broke free into the stillness. A villager caught in the grasp of dark tendrils, pulled into the abyss. "No!" Rebecca yelled, adrenaline ripping through her. Shaking off fear, she took a step forward, ready to lose herself into the fight for Ella's freedom. But Ella sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face. "Mom, I can't hold it back." Panic surged within Rebecca. "You can. You have to." The ground trembled again, and for a heartbeat, Rebecca felt the weight of despair crush down on her, making it hard to breathe. "Mom. Mom. Ben cried. In that moment, everything shattered. The shadows surged forward, a writhing mass, enveloping Ella. Rebecca could only watch as her daughter vanished, consumed by the darkness. "No! Ella!" she screamed, reaching out as the shadows recoiled, leaving only silence. A new voice echoed in the stillness, colder than the deepest winter. "What will you sacrifice to save her?" Rebecca's heart dropped as she turned slowly, dread settling over her like a thick fog. What would she be forced to give up to reclaim her daughter? What horrors awaited her in the heart of the forest's depths? The whispers filled the air, so soft yet filled with malice, curling around Rebecca like a suffocating blanket. She wrestled against panic, her chest heaving with each breath, as the questions spiraled incessantly in her mind. What could she possibly sacrifice? The darkness loomed. It was no longer an ethereal threat but a living entity, pulsing, swirling, and beckoning her deeper into the suffocating forest. "Ella!" The name echoed in the stillness, a desperate sound that seemed to dissolve into the shadows. The silence returned, thick like treacle, and Rebecca knew, instinctively, that time was slipping away. Ben grabbed her hand tightly, desperately clinging to her as if he could anchor her to reality. "Mom, we have to go. They'll come back." His wide eyes reflected the raw fear that choked her. With a swift shake of her head, she fought the despair clawing at her throat. "We'll find her, I promise." The words felt hollow as they echoed, but there was no time to unravel that thought. Every instinct screamed to move, to flee the suffocating weight of the forest and its beckoning shadows. So, she turned away from where Ella had disappeared, dragging Ben with her. The ground quaked beneath their feet, roots writhing, reaching out like fingers to ensnare them, but Rebecca pushed forward. With every step, she could feel the shadows pressing in, a presence that shared the air, thick and cold. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught her eye, another villager stumbling from the underbrush. "Over here." He beckoned, his face pale, eyes wide with terror. "You have to hurry. They're coming." Hope ignited momentarily as they followed him, weaving through the trees. But the path twisted and turned, the familiar scent of pine now tainted with something foul, rot, decay. This was not the way back home. It felt more like a descent into a waking nightmare. They emerged into a clearing, a space where moonlight fought to infiltrate the darkness. In the center stood an altar, rough-hewn stone slick with moss and partially obscured by creeping vines. Rebecca's blood ran cold. "Mom, what is that?" Ben's voice trembled, a whisper lost in the heavy silence. Before she could respond, the ground began to tremble violently. The altar rumbled to life, and Rebecca froze, horror gripping her as she watched shadows swirl above it, forming shapes that danced like devils in the dim light. "Leave! Now!" The villager screamed, terror matching Rebecca's own. But it was too late. The ground erupted, and skeletal hands clawed their way out, hands that looked eerily familiar. "Mom!" Ben screamed, his grip tightening painfully on her hand. Rebecca watched, paralyzed with fear, as the shadows morphed into anguished faces, the lost and the damned villagers that had disappeared, their eyes reflecting despair and a longing for release. Among them, she recognized others she knew, including those who had defied the darkness and vanished, now standing trial under its evil influence. That a low voice reverberated through the clearing, "You must make a choice. Honor your flesh or sacrifice the innocent." Rebecca felt her heart pound painfully against her ribs. A choice? The weight of those words twisted in her stomach. The figure of Ella, trapped within the void, haunted her thoughts. Was it truly possible to save her? "Mom! Please!" Ben's voice trembled, pulling her back from madness. Without thinking, Rebecca stepped forward, adrenaline coursing through her, mixing with a cold dread. Each echo of the whispers deepened, flowing through her veins. "I'll save her. Take me. Whatever it takes." With that declaration, the shadows lunged toward her, cruel laughter mingling with her heartbeat. Would she be consumed by the darkness she sought to conquer? Or would she face a fate far worse? As Rebecca felt herself being pulled down into the abyss, she wondered, had she made the right choice? The grip of despair tightened, the weight of her decision echoing with ominous finality. And in that suffocating moment, a flicker of light broke through the darkness, a scream that shattered the stillness. "Mom! Wait for me." Would she reach Ella before it was too late? The darkness swallowed her whole. Rebecca felt weightlessness, as if she were suspended between realities, the warmth of hope and the chill of dread battling within her. It was disorienting. Shapes and shadows morphed around her, blending into the cacophony of whispered horrors, each syllable seeping into her mind like poison. Then, with a jolt, she landed hard on the ground, the impact stirring the damp earth beneath her. Light flickered, the clearing resurfacing like a nightmare repeating. "Mom!" Ben's voice pierced through the haze. She turned to see him, panic-stricken, his small form trembling beside the altar, but something was wrong. He was further away now, as if some unseen force held them apart. "Ben!" She called, but her voice faltered. It felt garbled, drowned by the sinister breaths of the shadows creeping closer. The skeletal hands clawing from the ground hesitated, then curved and twisted toward her son. "No!" The single word ripped from her throat, raw with desperation. She surged forward, but a stinging chill wrapped around her legs, pulling her back. A figure draped in swirling darkness stepped out from the altar. Its face morphed, revealing a multitude of anguished visages, all familiar, all victims of the same curse. "Choose," it rasped, its voice multiple, echoing like a funeral dirge. The ground shook with the weight of its command, "Your flesh or his innocence." Rebecca's heart shattered. The ultimatum seared through her, hot and cutting. This wasn't just a choice between her and Ben. Ella's face loomed over her, panic a ghost both present and absent, caught somewhere in the festering dark. "No. I want to play your game." She screamed defiantly, rattling against the chains of despair that threatened to pull her under, and then it happened. The ground beneath the altar erupted, sending a wave of malodorous soil and screams wrapping around her. Bodies, lost souls of the villagers, burst forth, each gaze fixed on her with pleading eyes, mouths open in silent wails. "They know you, Rebecca. They want your choice," the figure hissed, each syllable coated in venom, a blend of lies and truths. As it spoke, shadowy tendrils reached for her, grasping her arms, reminding her of the weight of decisions yet made. "Mom! I can't lose you too. Ben's voice quivered and she could see the terror in his eyes, raw and pure. Rebecca fought against the clutches of darkness gripping her. The weight of sorrow and urgency surged within her. I won't give you what you want. A sudden flicker of defiance shot through her, igniting a fire she feared was long extinguished. Without a second thought, she ripped herself away from the sinister grasp. Take me, then. With that declaration, images of Ella flashed in her mind, a phantom of hope, bright but fading. She felt herself being torn, the shadows swirling violently around her. They cried out, slithering toward her like snakes drawn to a flame. Mom! Panic twisted in Rebecca's gut. She shot a glance back at Ben, and without hesitation, she lunged. Stay with me. Hold on. The shadows writhed in fury at her resolve, weaving figures from the darkness ready to ensnare her in their embrace. But just as she felt the tight grip of despair tightening once more, the trees erupted into an ominous sound, branches snapping, leaves rustling frantically. The air thickened as a bright flash momentarily blinded her, frightened murmurs in the dark grew turning to shrill laughter. Your sacrifice comes due. A flicker of recognition gnawed at her thoughts. The figures were shifting, but not towards her. They turned towards Ben, dragging him into the darkness filled with chaos. Ben! Rebecca pushed through the seething mass, uncertainty and anger battling inside her. She could lose him, too. But as she reached for him, the shadows intertwined around them, both vicious and relentless. Did she have what it took to save her son, or would she lose everything in a world governed by darkness? Mom! Don't let them take me. The shrieks filled the air, disjointed words twisting into a single haunting question: could she be brave enough to face the encroaching doom? And then it clicked, a choice to make within the storm, as the light flickered again. Would she dare plunge into the depths to save what remained of her family? The altar trembled beneath their feet, revealing secrets long buried. Would she have the strength to unlock them? The air crackled with tension, the smell of decay heavy in Rebecca's lungs. Every shriek from Ben sliced through her, fraying her nerves like twine. She stumbled, her foot caught in the viscous shadows that now grasped like fingers around her limbs. The altar loomed taller, a malevolent tower promising ruin. Rebecca strained against the darkness, reaching out towards her son. I'm coming, Ben. She shouted, her voice raw and desperate. But the wailing echoed around them, a sinister choir drowning her out. The shadows writhed, morphing into faces familiar, yet twisted in anguish. Each one beckoned as if to say, welcome back. In those horrified expressions, she recognized the villagers, their pain radiating like a beacon of dread, crossing the boundaries of life and death. Their hollow eyes drilled into her, demanding retribution. Your choice, Rebecca. The figure rasped, its voice 100-fold, a symphony of torment. Who will it be? The ground heaved violently, the altar ferociously shuddering. Shadows erupted from its depths, bursting forth like angry serpents hungry for flesh. For a heart-stopping moment, the laughter subsided, replaced by a chilling stillness. It was a pause, heavy as lead. Before the storm, Rebecca felt the grip of fear tighten around her throat. Ben! She cried again, panic rising. The tendrils tightened, wrapping around his skinny frame, pulling him away from her. Sweat trickled down Rebecca's back, cold and heavy. In this visceral chaos, she saw Ella's face again, a spirit lost in the shadows. You have to protect him. Her whisper urged, filled with desperation. Save him. A wave of warmth surged within her, a flicker of defiance igniting. The figure before her shimmered, flickering like an old film losing its projection. You think your will can withstand the darkness? We are all you have left. It howled, anger bleeding through its distorted features. Rebecca swallowed hard. She could feel the weight of the world pressing against her chest. I would rather be lost than lose him. She spat, tight-lipped and fierce. With a sudden, fierce determination, she lunged forward, her hands slipping between the shadowy tendrils. Time warped around her as she fought against the darkness, her heart racing so loud it drowned out all else. I want to let you take him. Not like they took you. The sound of her protest choked the laughter, sending ripples through the shadows. For a fleeting moment, a sliver of light pierced through, warm and golden, the brightness illuminating their faces, their anguish now mixed with confusion. In that moment, she saw a chance. "Your choice, Rebecca." It bellowed again, and the ground shook, sending tremors through her bones. With sheer will, she broke free, reaching for Ben. "Hold on." The shadow shrieked in frustration but felt vulnerable for the first time. Her fingers clasped around Ben's wrist, yanking him closer. His small hands gripped hers tightly, his eyes filled with fear but also trust, but the moment was ephemeral. A darkness surged back with renewed vigor, threatening to rip them apart. The ground bucked, tilting toward a chasm of despair that seemed to open the very fabric of reality. Rebecca gasped as a cold hand reached for her heart, stealing her breath away. Suddenly, a shrill laugh erupted, cutting through the tension. "Choose again, dear Rebecca. What will it be?" The altar trembled, and the shadows howled with anger. Desperation clawed at her throat. Was there another choice? She could feel the coldness creeping in around them, breaching the warmth of her resolve. "Mom, please don't leave me." Ben cried out, her heartbeat quickened. The abyss loomed beneath them, a dark promise of loss and sorrow. If she didn't act now, they would be consumed. "Look for the keys within the shadows." Ella's voice rang in her head, urgent and clear, but each word felt like sand slipping through an hourglass. Fading fast, moving with a newfound urgency, she turned back to face the swirling void. Where were the keys? The lost souls? Were they the very shadows she avoided? The altar quaked, as if daring her to find the truth woven into the grotesque tapestry of dread. Hushed whispers floated around her, a mosaic of regret and hope, pleading as if they too sought release from their dark fate. With Ben close, she plunged her hand into the shadowy depths, desperate for an answer. What would she find, or would it consume them both completely? Rebecca's heart raced as she plunged her arm deeper into the inky shadows, feeling their icy tendrils wrap around her wrist. Panic clawed at her throat. She couldn't let them pull her away from Ben. The shadows twisted around her, seeking to swallow her whole, each passing second dragging them closer to oblivion. "Mom." Ben's voice trembled, breaking with fear. She could feel his small frame shuddering against her, the grip of his tiny hand reassuring yet fragile. With each frantic tug, the shadows hissed louder, demanding a litany of despair. The figures within them screamed her name, a chorus of anguish that threatened to overwhelm her spirit. "Hold on tight," she shouted, desperately guiding them through the smothering gloom. The darkness throbbed as if alive, clawing at her senses. She dug deeper, her fingers brushing the cold, slick surface of something buried within. "Ben, I can, Mom, please." A sudden chill swept through her, silencing the whispers for an instant. She felt it then, a hard object, a key-like shape nestled in the blackness. Hope ignited within her chest. She wrapped her hand around it, pulling it free with all her strength. The shadows recoiled, letting out a wailing shriek of fury. They writhed and twisted violently, their rage palpable, fueling the darkness that sought to snatch them back. Her heart pounded, echoing the chaotic pulse of the altar beneath her feet. "Mom." "What is it?" Ben cried, his voice breaking through her focus. "It's a key. A way out." She turned her gaze back to the altar, now a swirling mass of shadow and despair. She could feel the weight of countless souls watching her, their presence both stifling and haunting. "Then use it, Mom. Please." With trembling hands, Rebecca brought the key closer to the altar, the metallic surface glinting against the meager light that flickered in the corners of the chamber. But before she could insert it, a violent shudder ran through the ground. The altar swayed ominously as the shadows swelled, pushing against them with bone-chilling force. In that moment of uncertainty, the figures began emerging from the darkness. Faces twisted in agony and longing, they pressed closer, each one a hollow echo of souls pleading for release. Rebecca felt her breath hitch, caught between horror and the pang of recognition. Each face was someone she'd known, someone she had lost. "Help us," they wailed, their voices tangled, desperate. "Join us." "No," she shouted, the sound erupting from her throat. She could feel dread tightening around her. She wouldn't give in. Not now, not ever. I want. I choose my son. With that defiance, she thrust the key forward, pressing it into the altar center. Light exploded from the point of contact, bathing them in a raw, blinding glow. The darkness recoiled, howling in fury, the anguished faces twisting in rage and sorrow, but the ground beneath them trembled violently, a crack forming as if reality itself were splitting apart. Ben squeezed her hand tighter. Mom. Stay strong. She shouted back, her voice cutting through the chaos. Hope surged inside her, pulsating through her veins. Perhaps this was the moment they could escape. Yet, the shadows screeched anew, snapping and twisting, ready to drag them down. The altar shattered, sending shards of dark light flying around them like shrapnel. With each thundering heartbeat, the specters shrieked for their freedom, the cries echoing into eternity. Ben! She screamed, her voice a spark in the tempest. We have to jump. But as they prepared to leap into the blinding light, a figure broke through the tumult, a familiar silhouette stepping from the shadows. It was Ella, her expression a mask of urgency and desperation. Don't trust it. She screamed, her voice barely breaking through the rage. You need to let go. It wants your souls. Rebecca's heart sank, caught. Should she trust the very spirit they had sought to save, or fight against the oncoming void dragging them deeper? Mom! Ben cried, shaking her arm. Jump! Ella urged again, but the shadows surged, and the altar reformed, dark and malevolent. They were running out of time. Would they choose to risk it all for a chance of freedom or succumb to the darkness once and for all? The moment hung, heavy with dread, as she faced the chaos converging around them, her heart warring against doubt. Could they escape the darkness, or would it consume them entirely? The choice was rippling, a horrific wave of uncertainty crashing over them. Rebecca's pulse pounded in her ears, a frantic beat that matched the surge of shadows pressing on them. The ground cracked wider, and the darkness clawed at her, urging her to choose. Ella's warning echoed, but fear wrapped around her heart like barbed wire. Mom, please. We have to go. Ben's voice sliced through the chaos, raw with desperation. Rebecca's grip on the key tightened. If she let go, would they be lost to the shadows? Panic unfurled inside her. The faces surrounding them twisted and snarled, mouths agape in silent screams of judgment. They were everywhere. Friends. Family. Loved ones long gone. Each expression twisted in crippling need, intensifying the dread smothering her. Jump or you'll lose everything. Ella pleaded, her essence flickering like a dying candle. But in that moment, the shadows writhed closer, an encroaching wave surging forward. Rebecca glanced at Ben, his eyes wide with terror. The weight of his trust enveloped her. In a frantic decision, she plunged the key into the altar, praying with every fiber of her being. Now! Jump! Light erupted, blinding and blaring, sending the shadows recoiling. The air crackled with wild energy. Rebecca grabbed Ben around the waist, ignoring the screams of the souls echoing around them. Hold on tight. She shouted, her breath restricted by raw fear. She leaped into the brilliance, the darkness imploding behind them. But as they flew through the light, it engulfed them, transforming the scene in an instant. They fell, their bodies suspended mid-air, as the light morphed into a vast, empty void. With a sickening lurch, they landed hard on cold, wet ground. Dazed, Rebecca blinked, her breath escaping in ragged gasps. Darkness surrounded them again, but this time it felt different, quieter. The familiar silhouettes remained, but they appeared farther away, coalescing into shapes like murky figures trapped behind glass. Are we safe? Ben whimpered, looking around, his small frame shaking. Is that over? Not yet, Rebecca breathed, scanning their surroundings. The shadows seemed to whisper, lingering yet more contained, like wild animals held back by two thin bars. Where are we? Before she could think, a low voice echoed in the distance, resonating off unseen walls. You can't escape your past, Rebecca. It will always haunt you. Heart thudding, she recognized the voice. The memory twisted like a blade in her gut. No, she whispered, not you, but out of the shadows emerged another figure, Avery. Her younger brother, lost to time long ago, his face etched with sorrow yet sharp as a blade. I've waited so long. You shouldn't have come back. Ben gasped. Mom, who is that? Get behind me. She shouted, panic surging anew. Avery advanced, the shadows curling around him, alive with malice. Rebecca, he said softly, a mockery of affection tainted with the suffering that bound him to this place. You have a choice to make. Finish what you started. What do you mean? Rebecca stepped back, pulling Ben closer. Every instinct screamed danger. You can save us, Avery said, his voice a haunting echo of the past. Join us. We're waiting for you. The air thickened with tension as more faces emerged, their mournful eyes searching hers. Friends, family, ghosts of choices not made, lives left behind. I won T, she declared, heart racing. I choose my son. We're leaving. But as she turned to flee, the shadows writhed with anger, the ground trembling beneath her feet. Her heart raced, panic clawing its way back into her throat. Ben clutched her hand like a lifeline, but the darkness lunged forward, reaching for them. Leave us, that's the only way. The cries turned desperate, each one a slice of heartache and regret, the heaviness of their collective pain pressed against her, suffocating. Could she really walk away? With no time to think, she took a step back, feeling the weight of their cries. If she turned her back now, what would stand in their place? More shadows? More faces? Mom, please. Ben cried, fear glazing his wide eyes. Suddenly, the ground cracked again, the altar's remnants breaking apart. Swirling shadows clawing fiercely to reclaim their hold. Choose, Rebecca. Avery's voice echoed, cold and demanding. You can save them all or lose everything. The choice hovered, dark and intricate, and as the shadows surged, snatching at her legs, Rebecca felt the last of her resolve wavering. But did she really want to save anyone from this living nightmare? The altar trembled, and she faced the engulfing chaos. Would she sacrifice her own peace for those lost or fight for her son's future? Choices hung heavy like an executioner's blade, waiting for the final stroke. Rebecca's heart raced as the shadows pulsed with an insatiable hunger, beckoning her with the promises of the lives she could save or the guilt she might carry. With Ben clutching her hand, the weight of the moment sank deep into her core. It was then she realized the darkness didn't just seek her, it thrived on indecision. I choose, she began, but the words came out jagged, caught in her throat like ashes. Those familiar faces loomed closer, whispers flooding her mind, reminding her of laughter, warmth, and the price of loyalty buried deep within the village's cursed history. Choose wisely, Avery hissed. His voice dripped with a mockery that twisted her insides. You could reclaim them, Rebecca. They're waiting for you. Ben's frightened eyes remained fixed on the encroaching darkness, his small strength fading in her grasp. No. We're not taking anyone else. She said vehemently. I want to leave you again, and I want to choose darkness. Each defeated tremor felt heavy, like years of anguish crashing down, the ground shook violently, shadows twirled, threatening to swallow her whole. The faces pressed in, insisting she embrace the pain they offered. She stumbled, nearly falling backward into the abyss, but Ben yanked her back. Mom. Don't go. His voice pierced through what felt like a suffocating fog. In that flash of clarity, Rebecca's resolve solidified. No more sacrifices, our family matters. She shouted, fueled by the love that ignited courage in her core. I choose my family over your darkness. I want my children to live. A blinding light erupted as she thrust the key once more toward the altar, feeling its warmth pulse like a heartbeat. The shadows recoiled, hurt and enraged at her defiance. You will regret this choice. The amalgamation of voices shrieked, twisting into a cacophony of despair. But she stood firm. I will never regret loving my children. And with every ounce of strength, she pressed the key into the altar's center. There was a deafening roar, a clash of shadows and light, that engulfed them in a blaze of warmth. As the light engulfed the darkness, Rebecca reached for Ben with a frantic grip. In that radiant brilliance, she could finally see Ella emerge, tears streaming down her small face, her eyes wide with clarity. "Mom!" Ella called, her voice cutting through the chaos like a beacon. In an instant, the shadows dissipated, and the vibrant energy exploded outward, swallowing the darkness. The faces that had haunted them, once twisted and anguished, sighed as if released from their torment. "It's over!" Ben shouted, his little hands breaking free as they surged together to embrace Ella. Rebecca fell to her knees, pulling her children into her arms, warmth flooding her heart. But deep inside, she felt a bittersweet sting, knowing their escape had come at a price unseen yet heavy, a weight of love that would whisper their sacrifice for decades. She would carry it, but only as a reminder of the bonds that could never be severed. The forest around them fell silent, its shadows receding into whispers, like memories no longer bound to this realm. "We're free," she murmured, looking at her children. Here, in the wake of battle, they stood united against the darkest of fears. They stumbled toward the edge of the clearing, the moonlight spilling softly over them, illuminating their path back home like a promise fulfilled. "Let us go home," Rebecca whispered, wrapping her arms protectively around her children. They moved together, leaving behind the remnants of dread, transcended by love. The whispers of the village faded into the night, a haunting echo dimming into the distance. They drove away, the coastal village fading in the rear window. Rebecca looked over at her children, taking in their sweet, innocent faces free from the burdens of shadows. "I love you both, so much," she said, her heart swelling with purpose. This was their moment, a moment of life reclaimed, love reborn, but as they journeyed forward, the weight of knowing would always linger. They had faced a darkness that could never truly fade, for their bond with each other now resonated stronger than ever. As the dawn broke behind them, illuminating the horizon in shades of hope, Rebecca felt her heart swell with gratitude for the chance to overcome darkness. They would carry it with them, united through every chance they took and every path they would choose. The end, yet, their story had only just begun. Now, do you see the importance of staying connected for more tales of bravery and resilience? You need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and let others know about this journey. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about how the family might navigate their new freedom, and don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support can make all the difference.